Hello. Thank you for coming, Heather. Wonderful. So great to have you here at Casual Space.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really eager to talk to a new group of people and share all the great things that I've gotten to do through the course of my career, all the great people I've met, and share all the great things that the Space Force is doing for the United States.
We are too. We're so excited to have you. And I see from your office, is this your office that you're live from?
Yes, this is my
Okay.
office. Yes.
And I should say pre-recorded. Everyone should know this is recorded. Uh, what I love about your office is like NASA offices, I think people have a very different impression of the simplicity that our offices often are, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I came into this job fairly recently, and it was an opportunity to kind of do a little housekeeping. And so, yeah, when you move around from office to office, because we change jobs quite a bit in the service, you realize as you get older to not take so much with you because you just have to continue to carry it around. So I did go for a little bit of a minimal approach here, and just I got a couple of pictures of the family, a couple of fun space art on my walls, and luckily I have a window, which is sometimes very rare for
Yes.
government work. A lot of times we do classified work, and it's a little dark because you can't have windows in some of those offices. But I'm very fortunate to be here on the beautiful aerospace campus at Los Angeles Air Force Base in California. So the weather's great. It's a pretty idyllic weekend we're going to be having here shortly.
Oh, that's wonderful. Where was this weather when we were just out in California? We did a trip and it was gray, cool, breezy. I came clearly at the wrong time.
So I will say a large portion of the year in the South Bay of California is just like that. We get this marine layer that comes in from the ocean. So it is really gray and foggy. You have to go inland a little bit more to get the sunshine, but we're hitting a sweet spot. So the fall in El Segundo and in Redondo Beach in the South Bay
Um,
area here is beautiful. They call it local summer because it's most people go off and do their vacations, obviously, from June to August. But starting from August through November, the weather's gorgeous. The marine layer's not here, the sun's out. You can actually, work on your tan a little bit and enjoy the weather and the beach and all of the fun. So,
now you tell me, okay, sold.
yeah.
I'm coming. I'm
Yes,
coming.
best time of year right
I love those local secrets. That's perfect. Yeah, people often are very surprised at how hot and humid the Chicagoland area can be, and also how beautiful our August month is too, where we have very little rain, lots of beautiful sun, and people think our leaves are turning, but not quite yet. We're almost there, not quite.
now.
Well, let's start with Space Camp. It was such an honor. You have recently been inducted into the Space Camp Hall of Fame. This is how we've connected, and it was such a pleasure to get to hear your story. And for those folks who are getting to hear your story for the first time, I'd love to have you share it with us as if we are hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
But again, congratulations.
Thank you. It was such an honor and in a way just a full circle moment for me, getting that achievement. Yeah, I was just a kid, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I literally was just into books and playing with my Barbies. And on a whim, I had another friend who went to space camp, and I was like, that sounds cool. We can drive there. My parents were from the Atlanta area, and so I went and did all the things to get there, and I had an amazing time. I
What
didn't
year
think,
did you go?
I want to say it was like 88, maybe my first year, something like that, 86 or 88, somewhere in there. And it was camp. So I had just completed the fifth grade. And I don't know if that's like a time where, kids are trying to sort themselves out and figure out what it is, what they're interested in, where they want to go, what they want to do. And you're starting to put some of the little kid things aside. And so this came at a really timely moment for me. And I remember sitting in the IMAX theater, and I felt like I was floating when I was watching like The Dream is Alive. And I was like, wouldn't this be amazing? Like, oh my gosh, just to be able to see the earth from above, just and I think I was a little bit in awe of that feeling because I had never experienced it before. And what was great about Space Camp was they showed you that space is accessible. You know, you can do this. There's really nothing stopping you. And especially when you're in the fifth grade and you haven't, gone through the hard maths and the hard sciences, the world is your oyster at that point. So,
Sure.
um, what it did is it kind of put me on a path academically. So I was like, hey, this is really interesting to me. Um, Also, just in my background, my dad was in the Army. So I'm what they call an Army brat. I
Uh,
lived in about 3 or 4 different Army bases across the country and in Germany. And so I really understood what service meant. It just gets ingrained in you as a kid. My extended family also joined the Army. I had, grandparents who also served in the Navy in World War II. So service is a very big part of my family background. And as I'm doing my research on what does it take to be an astronaut, you just how did those folks get to where they're at? There are a lot of commonalities. Many of them were engineers, and many of them were in the military. And so I didn't tell my dad. My dad was always like, "My daughter's never going to join the Army," and I was like,
mm,
"Okay, we're gonna table that discussion, Dad, for a little bit." But it did set me on a path academically. It got me serious about math and science. Um, I live near Six Flags, and I was generally scared of roller coasters, but I said, I need to go do astronaut training. I'm going to go to Six Flags and ride all the roller coasters. So it helped me get over quite a bit of fear in that area. And then it just became a kind of an annual thing. Every other year, I'd say, hey, can I go to space camp again? Can this be my birthday present? And so pretty much every other year, I ended up going to space camp, going through Academy Level 1, Academy Level 2. I ended up going a total of 5 times. I got some experience with some international students because we lived in Georgia. There was a Georgia to Georgia exchange program, and Coca-Cola sponsored a group of us to go to space camp. And
oh, wow.
so, yeah, that was really cool. And so I got kind of an international flavor and an appreciation of how, NASA and civil space interacts with other countries as well for space exploration. And so again, it set me on a path. And eventually, when I hit high school, I had the conversation with my dad. I was like, "Okay, Dad, I know you don't want me to join the Army, but what do you think about the Air Force or the Navy?" And so at that point, he knew I was pretty much invested in this plan to try to be an astronaut. And so he was all in, and he was my biggest cheerleader and helped me get into shape. And
Oh,
yeah, which was a lot. PT is not my physical fitness is not my forte in any way, but I had a goal, and it really, it drove me academically and for my physical health, and helped me get a scholarship to Air Force ROTC.
oh,
So,
really?
yeah, I was able to get a 4-year scholarship fully paid for by the Air Force to pursue a degree in electrical engineering at Auburn University, which is in the state of Alabama. So I have a lot of ties to Alabama, not just Space Camp, but my university as well. And yeah, it was tough, but I had a great group of friends through RTC, and they knew I was motivated to pursue, the advancement of space through the military, and they supported me, and great teammates there, and a great group of people that I met through the electrical engineering department at Auburn as well. And so I credit them to helping me get my commission in the Air Force. And so that's kind of my origin story, so to speak, on how I got into the service.
Fantastic. I love that your dad helped and stepped in and received your wish with his enthusiasm and support. I'm curious, like, was he like, okay, sit-ups on Tuesday, running laps on Wednesday? What was his PT regimen
Oh
with you?
gosh. he was hardcore. And we lived in a very hilly area of
Oh
the
no.
metro Atlanta area. So I ran a lot of hills, and he got me in shape. And I remember, so when you go to college for RTC, you take your PT test that first week of school, and they wanted to take me on a vacation before I started college, and we went to Disney World, and he had me running all over Disney World in that Florida heat. I mean, it was tough, but
That is tough.
again, we had a goal. We knew we had to get that scholarship started. So he had me out there every morning. No fun until you get your PT in. So,
Oh,
but it was good having him there for sure.
thank you, Dad. Now, was he at your was he there when at the Space Camp alumni service that they
He was
hosted for you? Oh, he
he was
was.
there. Yeah. Being from here from LA, I don't have too many, you know, colleagues out there that I could have brought to the dinner, but I definitely wanted my parents there because they were such huge supporters of me going to space camp and sending me there every year and driving me there and encouraging me through the really tough, rigorous academic program and all through my career. Again, both my parents were there. They've been my biggest cheerleaders, and I definitely would not be here without their support. So
Oh, nice. And
kudos to
who's
mom
the
and dad.
Oh, kudos. Absolutely, mom and dad. Thank you. And the friend that invited you that first time to camp, were they aware of how much it changed you or inspired you?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say that honestly the person wasn't a friend. It was more of an acquaintance. So, not anybody that I still keep in touch with to this day. But I
Sure.
will say, I met a lot of friends through Space Camp, and there's a number of them that I still keep in touch with. And this is even before, Facebook and social media. So, to maintain a pen pal relationship back in those times was a little bit more of a challenge, but I still have a few friends that I keep up with that we went to space camp with. So it's
You
pretty
bet.
cool.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. As a camper myself, I remember some of the friends too that you're like, you connect instantly, you have a lot in common, and yeah, pen paling right back in the day. You're bringing me back to the day. Mhm. So you had some discipline already ingrained in you from the family that you've had in the military. What part of it was the space part or aviation part that started to pull you in? Was that right away after camp or was that prior to camp? Had it always been there?
So my dad was an aviator in the Army, but I knew my eyes were too bad to fly. So back before LASIK was available or accessible, they would, cut people from the aviation programs if you had bad vision. So I always knew I was not going to be a flyer. Um, but I knew from all of my research that there were still opportunities for people with bad eyes to be mission specialists or payload specialists. And so I was like, okay, I'm definitely going to pursue the engineer route to go that way. My favorite part of space camp was when I got to put on the EVA suit and go hang out on the arm and go do, fix the satellite and everything. I thought that was the funnest part. So part of
Nice.
me always wanted to be doing the spacewalks and fixing things anyway. So it didn't hurt my head that I couldn't fly. But no, space camp was the main driver for why I wanted to pursue a career in space and in the military. And I always kind of knew aviation was just not going to be my thing.
I see. I see. So after and during college, I love and students love hearing about mentors, projects, or opportunities that help you land eventually. And I'm getting a little hint of ahead of ourselves to the satellite world. Can you walk us through maybe a first impression of when you landed on that or were interested in that and anyone who guided or encouraged you?
Yeah. I would say so. Alabama, the state in itself, has a very strong space heritage. So there's a lot of space sprinkled out through all the majors in the engineering departments. In electrical engineering, I had senior design project. We built thermometers that we would sell to alumni, and we really learned the microelectronics process, how you build devices, how you ensure they're working, they're testing, how you produce them and manufacture them. And that was a really great learning experience for me. It talked about teaming and working together as a team, learning how to use the equipment, and putting in that kind of systems engineering rigor that we needed to make sure that our products were successful. So we learned a lot about business in doing that too. Um, and it's really great because nowadays I can go to a contractor facility, and I go and I love walking around and looking at their floor, what they're building and producing, and I see pockets of what I kind of worked on at one point, and I'm like, I know what they did there. I did some of that at one point. And it's just neat to kind of see how the technology's evolved since when I did that project to now. But that was a really great project, and all my classmates were great. And I did have a number of professors that were very encouraging. Anything in electrical engineering is very translatable to anything in space and on satellite. So that was one of the reasons I pursued an electrical engineering degree. It's kind of considered one of the harder engineering specialties, but you're going to need them in every type of industry that you're looking to be in terms of technology. So I knew it would translate to something from a satellite perspective, even though I wasn't in aerospace engineering per se. I knew that aerospace engineers and satellites, they all need electronics and microelectronics, and you needed to understand how the systems work together. And there's a heavy layer of computer programming, computer science also involved. And so I knew that those skills would be very translatable to what I would do here as a double E in the service.
So, wow, that's phenomenal. And I'm glad. You know what I'm thinking, Heather? There's a group of us that went back to be counselors or crew trainers after graduation. And I remember when we would reset the flight deck and put all the buttons in place, and there was always someone who would come in and like the first thing they would do is touch it and touch all the buttons, just hands-on excitement. I think, was that you?
Maybe, but I will say I was also a counselor. I forgot to put that in.
What
So after
year?
my 97, 1997.
I was 98. We just missed seeing each
Oh
other.
man, a year. I would have
That's
loved
really
to have
cool.
gone back a second year, but I had to, start my job. So I couldn't
Of
do another
course.
year. But I was glad I had that one in. But yeah, I remember having to reset all those buttons too. I'm with you,
You
100%.
probably could do it today though, right? By memory, because it was
Oh yeah.
just so ingrained in our, oh, I love that we both did that. Yeah. And you know who was the worst? The adults.
Yes.
Kids remember they get told and they are respectful
Yeah.
and they know not to touch if that's what you said. But the adults would come in and they'd be like, ooh, and I just asked you not to touch. Click, click, click. They touch them all. Yeah, that's super great. And then being the counselor crew trainer is just a
Mhm.
whole nother different experience too. Even though you went through the experience as a younger, as a kid or a student, going back and then being that person that gets to see the joy of their first experiences.
Mhm.
How is that for you?
Yeah. Oh, it was really cool. And I don't claim to be a teacher in any way. I really respect educators. I have two kids, and there are periods of when I was raising them that I was like, boy, I'm really glad I'm not teaching you because my patience wouldn't survive.
During
Um,
COVID? Sure.
yes, exactly. But when I was a counselor, it was really fun because I wasn't too terribly far removed from their age as well. And it was still really new and exciting for me too. And, seeing the joy and when the light bulbs would go off and
Yes.
seeing them work together as a team and a group and seeing those friendships form similar to how the friendships formed when I was there. It was just really incredible to watch. I had so many good memories with that. I had international groups as well there too, so I got to learn from them as much as they were learning from us. Um, I did learn that not everybody who goes to space camp really wants to be there. So there are always some kids that, um, they were just told they're going to space camp, and they were just there kind of taking up space. And it was sad because sometimes that took away the joy from the kids that really did want to be there. But for the most part, most kids were really into it, and all around just um, had a really good time learning about space, learning about what's out there, a whole nother, market and industry that they could be a part of. They didn't have to just do what they know or do what somebody said they had to do. It was just a whole
Yeah.
new realm of possibilities that we were opening doors and teaching them. And I just really loved seeing, that awareness come across them.
Yes, it was such a treasure to be witness to the magic transformation that would happen right in front of your eyes. Like the
Yeah.
students that were looking and saying, I think I could do this, or I'm seeing a fun opportunity here, or perhaps this is of interest I never thought would be. I love that you also said earlier that you watched The Dream is Alive, as did I, in the IMAX theater. So epic at the time to see. I think as we were back as crew trainers, I think that movie evolved into something ISS with Tom Cruise narrating. Like
Oh, yeah. Was it Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks?
maybe
Is it
that. Oh, yeah,
maybe?
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, one of those big
A
actors
great,
shared.
yeah, another great movie and epic. You can, everything you do at Space Camp, whether it's hands-on touching, getting in the simulators, or just going to movie, are all these opportunities to see that transformation and be witness to that. It can be that simple as a movie, or it can be profound in a
Yeah.
sim, and it was just all right there. So, okay, after your education and your experience coming back to Space Camp, how did you go into the next chapter?
Yeah. So again, my parents' biggest cheerleaders, they helped set me up with the career. And my first assignment, I was a missileer in the Air Force. Excuse me, I didn't join the Air Force to do anything other than space. But sometimes you just kind of have to take the jobs that are given to you in order to get your foot in the door. So I spent 3 years up in Minot, North Dakota. As a missile ICBM operator. ICBM is an intercontinental ballistic missile. So we have missiles all across the northern tier, really to protect the homeland in case there's an attack on the United States. And so a lot of people don't realize that they have people sitting 24/7 on alert, on crew, underground, making sure that if the country were to be attacked, they would set up their defenses per presidential orders. So I did that job for 3 years. It was stressful. It wasn't a garden spot for sure in the country, but you kind of um, you know do those jobs in order to help the rest of your career progress. I will say I met some of the best people and friends that I've had throughout my whole career when I was a missileer, and to this day keep in touch with them. A natural progression from that job usually is into a space operations assignment. Because I was an engineer, I'm what's called an acquisitions officer. So I went into an acquisitions job where I actually develop and build systems. I won't say I actually put my hands on the systems. I help work with contractors who build systems for the Air Force. So I moved to Florida and worked for an organization called AFTAC, and we helped field seismometers that go around the world. Still not quite space related, but I went there because my fiance, now spouse, also got stationed in Florida. So he got to launch rockets and do the fun thing at Cape Canaveral. And had another job because at that point it was just about getting us together
Yeah.
in location. And so we still had such a blast, though, being around, literally a blast, being
I,
around Cape Canaveral and
yeah.
watching the rocket launches and the shuttle launches as well. was really inspiring. I will say when we were there, that was when the Columbia accident happened. And so that was, obviously a very sad time for all of us and put the program at NASA on pause for a number of years. But other than that, it was still really exciting to be part of the space industry down there, even though I was just in observation mode. And then we had my first child. So a lot happened for us while we were there. Um, but after that assignment, it was like, okay, it's time for me to do space now. So the best place to do space and acquisitions is Los Angeles Air Force
Okay.
Base. So here in LA at the Air Force Base is right now it's called Space Systems Command is the lead acquisition organization of the Space Force. It's gone through numerous name changes over the years, but it originated way back in the 40s with General Bernard Schriever, and it was originally the organization was called the Western Development Division, and so this organization has morphed and migrated over numerous reorganizations over time to what it is now. But LA has always been a very central focal point for space acquisitions and space development over the years. So I was really excited to finally get to come to Los Angeles and work on my first space program. And
Okay.
so yeah, I learned a lot there and had my second child here. And so we definitely growing our family at this point. Um, but it's been fun. And so again, I'm here again now. A lot of this is coming back full circle.
So when did you first hear about Space Force? Had you moved to LA prior, or was that all in the background when you were in Florida, and then strategically you started making plans?
Yeah, well, in between the first time I was here, where we had my daughter, so she's now 17 years old.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I, I moved to a number of other places in my career, and I've done a number of other space jobs. But I think discussions of the Space Force have been around since I was commissioned into the Air Force in '98. Like there's always been talk since I've been in the service of a separate service for space. A recognition that space is a different domain. We build our systems a little bit differently for space than we do for aircraft. That there's always been a little bit of a push and pull between Air Force for funding resources and personnel resources. And I will say that as of late, last number of years, our adversaries are really showing their cards a lot more, and they're making significant advances in space as well. So for a long time, uh, we had the luxury of taking our time building very large satellite systems in the Air Force, and we had superiority over the space domain. And then now we're seeing China, Russia especially, they're making significant strides and advances. And it was time, a national imperative, to actually stand up a separate service to address those threats. So in 2019, the Space Force was signed into the National Defense Authorization Act, and that's when we started as officially a new service. But I will say, again, we have been talking and thinking about this for a number of years before that date. It was just, finally time, now that we saw kind of the landscape of what's going on in space, the rise of commercial space industry,
Yeah,
uh, in addition to the threats that we're seeing, that we actually have a separate service dedicated to our space resources.
that's fantastic. Thank you for walking us through. I think we're just so excited to have your perspective and your career highlights here and so many questions about Space Force. But I really appreciate you walking us through the history. And a lot of people also will ask, why are we letting the International Space Station go commercial or be retired? And I'm like, every program evolves. And it's a
Mhm.
good thing. It's looking forward to the future. Although, how can I possibly be old enough to have a daughter that sees the shuttle program in the museum because when mom used to work on shuttle program, that wasn't that long ago. I
No, right?
feel like it's just
Right?
like was yesterday. And I was when I was at NASA, we were just starting to assemble the International Space Station, and now we're talking about retiring it.
I
Um,
know.
it's just not possible. Is your family interested, or do you see them, anyone in the family, looking to also be in Space Force or military in their careers and futures, being 17?
Um, I have hopes and dreams, and I have done what I can as a parent to encourage it, but not push it. Um, so right now, no, but I'm still hoping, holding out a little bit of hope. Let's just say that. The seeds have been planted. Hopefully, they'll grow. Maybe they'll come back around full circle and decide, hey, maybe mom was onto something back then. My son is in an engineering program. He's in civil engineering at Auburn University as well. So
Oh,
maybe there's something there, eventually, especially if he stays in Alabama, where again, there's a really heavy space industry there. Maybe
yes.
my daughter, she's going to be a great leader. She thinks very critically. She's got a hard worker, and I can see her doing something with space if she wants it.
Oh, hmm. Where does she get that from? Hmm.
So we'll see.
Do you feel any pressure about representing Space Force either as a woman or a mom or a leader in any way or an engineer? Like any of those things, is that something people look towards you and say, okay, as one of the first generations going through a new government agency, as being one of the first, what is it usually people find you as asking you most about?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think when I was younger, there were more females at the lower ranks, and over time, for different personal reasons, they all start to kind of drop out, and then before you know it, you're looking around a room and you're like, wait, what happened? I'm the only woman here, right? And it can be a little intimidating if you let it be. And it all just depends on how much confidence you have in the discussion and in the forum you're in and who you're surrounded by. But for the most part, I do feel that need now that again there's a lot more females in the younger ranks. So I do want to try to represent them well and show up as a strong role model for them and show them, hey, you can succeed and be successful and make the ranks, and you can have a family and still balance it all somehow. I'm surprised I have, but it's manageable. It requires a very understanding spouse who has flexibility and understanding, and so I props to my husband Steve, who's been here along my side for so many years. Again, he was also active duty for a period of time, so it was tough to sometimes juggle our work schedules together, but we figured it
Sure.
out. And so I do think it's important to kind of showcase that. It's not impossible. You don't have to separate from the service because of family decisions. There are ways to make it work. There's some compromising along the way, but it can be possible. So um, I'm lucky that the other women who are of similar rank, they're all amazing, and we all connect. And I know they're a great resource when I need them. And I have a ton of male allies as well. As long as you come to work every day with a good work ethic and you deliver and you help perform and you all have shared goals. Um, it's all about taking care of the people and getting the mission done, and nobody can discount that. So
Yeah,
as long as you come with that
fantastic.
mindset, um, every day is a great day.
Good. Oh, wonderful. There are like anything. that we do in when it comes to space exploration, there's some myths about obstacles and things that, or maybe misconceptions. Um, is there anything we don't know that we should know when it comes to satellites or things, commercial space flight orbits that we wish we could tell people more about? Um, maybe it's a challenge that you face every day. I know working at NASA, there was a lot of things that I found the public were not fully understanding, like how difficult it is to sometimes access space, or they didn't understand sometimes how people would, come home and have some challenges from returning home from space, or sometimes they just didn't realize how many rovers we had on the planet Mars or what the next mission was. What are some things that might be challenging in your role that if the public could have a better understanding of, we would love to learn more.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things I can't really fully discuss in many ways, but again, kind of going back to the threats that are out there, they're what drive our mission and the need for the separate service. I would say, sometimes there's a question on why do we have a separate service? Obviously, it's because of that threat that's out there. Sometimes there's a question on how are you different than what NASA does? Again, we are about securing the nation's interests through space. Um, and so, NASA is really focused on space exploration and furthering space in that civil research perspective. So again, think of us as helping ensure freedom of access within the space domain, as opposed to research and development and exploration. Um,
Thank
you know,
you.
there are a lot of things that the country depends on from our systems, from a communications perspective, from GPS.
Yes.
The Space Force operates the GPS constellation. You know, quality of life in many ways is enabled by the satellites and the space systems that the Space Force fields for all of you. So I think people don't fully realize the dependency of our country on the spacecraft and the systems that we're fielding within the service. And I would say that's probably one of the biggest things. You couldn't just, I don't think, um, get rid of what we do and be able to have the same level of quality of life that current Americans are experiencing right now. So
When students are listening to this, do they have the option or ability to go and apply to Space Force right out of school or college?
So we're still under the Department of the Air Force. So now the Department of the Air Force has the Air Force and the Space Force underneath it. So we are still listed under, if you were to go through an ROTC program, the Air Force ROTC program and the Air Force Academy, that would be the right way to look at applying, or go to an Air Force recruiter even, if you wanted to enlist in the service. So you'd still use the Air Force recruiting system,
I
and then
see.
apply to the Space Force that way.
Does the Space Force recognize any former NASA public affairs officers?
There's always a need for public affairs officers across the service, and we have a great PA apparatus here. But I'm sure
Okay.
they would always welcome more help. So um, send them
Well,
your resume. I'm
oh,
sure they'll.
oh my gosh, Heather. Oh, please. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm just so thrilled. When you go back to where things really were foundational for you, and you had some of the moments you discussed, is that place that felt like home? Is that with family? Is that with space camp back in Alabama? When you've traveled so much and seen so much of the world and worked with so many people, what feels like home for you?
Oh goodness. I would say probably Auburn, where I went to college. It was always a place that even when I was a kid, because my parents went there as well. So we always ended up going to the campus, going to games. My brother went there. So it was always a part of my life growing up. There's always a lot of pride. Auburn has produced um, 5 astronauts that they're all very proud of. It might actually be more than that, so don't quote me on the numbers. But
Oh,
and a number of Auburn engineers are in the space industry now, helping influence NASA and the Space Force. And so I'm really lucky. It's really nice that my son's going there now because it gives me an opportunity to go back. I'm now also part of an organization called 100 Women Strong, which is chartered to encourage retention of women in STEM and in the engineering program. And so I'm glad that I'm now at a point where I can give back and help with that organization, help with young engineers on campus as well. And so the space, the Alabama connection, the family connection, it all just kind of comes together at Auburn for me. So very proud, to be a part of that school and be in the alumni organizations, and now I'm at a point where I can give back. So that's
oh,
what I would call home in a way. It's where I end up just always gravitating towards.
I'm glad. Yeah. I feel Alabama is such a special place. It's a place where families are coming to more and more. There's lots of growth. When I went back to Huntsville just after a couple of years, it has grown so much and always impressive. Like, hotels and new apartment buildings and the
Yeah,
campus. It's really going quickly. So that's a good thing. And lots of foundational things. I think you had mentioned it a little bit, but so much space history comes
hmm
from Alabama, from the original Redstone rocket testing facility to Warner von Braun being there. And of course, Space Camp. It's such a great place to start. I'm glad your son's there. I'm glad you found your experiences there too. It's really a great place.
yeah, love it.
Well, we love that you've been able to share with us your path, your career, your highlights, some fun stuff. What are you doing when you're not working? Is there some hobbies or activities outside of um, space and space exploration and protecting our country? Thank you so much that you enjoy.
Um, well, when I turned 40, I had a bucket list of items, and one of them was to learn to play the guitar.
Hey,
So that is something that I started a little bit later in life, but it clicked with me. And I had lived in Albuquerque at the time and found a really amazing guitar teacher there. And she knew somebody here in California. So when I moved from Albuquerque to Los Angeles, I got to, keep my lessons going. And
oh,
that's music, I think, is my therapy, my happy place. Definitely helps me tap into my creative juices uh, quite often. So that's what I would say is probably my main hobby, besides, taking care of all the things for my son in college that he needs help with, and
oh,
my
sure.
17-year-old, and making sure she's set up for success as she enters her new chapter going forward. So my kids and my guitar, and that's mostly it. And my dog, a
What kind
little,
of dog?
I have a Chihuahua. She's like four
Oh,
pounds. she's, but she's got the biggest heart. That one, so she knows she rules the house for sure.
and what kind of music do you play on guitar? Are we talking like heavy metal, classical guitar?
No, not heavy. Classical guitar is a lot more skill than I could probably offer. I would say a little bit of classic rock, a little bit of country, pop. I love
Nice.
80s and 90s music, singer-songwriter, indie stuff. That's more my
They
jam.
have a astronaut band that you should let's get you in touch. They'll probably need a guitar player and
Maybe, although they're probably much more skilled. I heard that they actually keep a guitar up on the ISS.
yes,
So I imagine there's some good practice time up there in space and a lot of inspiration on orbit for sure.
right. You can take lessons, long distance lessons. There it
That would
is.
be so cool.
Oh my
So
goodness. Well, I really want to thank you and on behalf of everyone who's ever went to space camp. It is just so heartwarming and wonderful, especially as a female, to see someone who enjoyed camp so much, knew that that was a part of their future, pursued it with passion, and are now where you are. Thank you for carving a path for many to follow and inspire. And also, thank you for just talking space and space camp with us. It's a lot of fun to do it. You helped me walk down memory lane, and I really hope that people enjoy, your story and continue to hear from you. I know you're speaking and you do some speaking engagements. If that is something we can put in the show notes, or if people can communicate with you in the way in which you're most comfortable, we'd love to do that.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I've got a few things out there, I think, on YouTube and a couple of engagements. I'm dabbling into artificial intelligence right now. So my next engagement is going to be up north in Silicon Valley, speaking on a panel for AI moving forward. So
Oh,
exciting stuff.
very cool. Um, all right. Well, I want to ask more things, maybe offline. Like, what else
Okay.
was on that bucket list? Because I'm reaching the end of my 40s, and I'm like, okay, what have you done that I need to do big and bold? I cannot wait to be inspired. But for now, I just want to say thank you again. Thank you for joining us here on Casual Space. We hope to see you anytime you'd like. Come back and join us on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been great. Take care.
Thank you.